Okay, so this is Roger Dunn. I met him when he first came in. He has an awesome love for Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I learned.
I should be playing tonight if I make it home on time.
Yes. Anyways, so we had a fun chat on that. He's also a full-time software developer and part-time GIS guru, which you probably know from his language already. Like, he knows software and coding, which is something that's totally foreign to me. So I'm excited for this. He enjoys scripting, databases, SQL analysis, documentation, designing feature class schemas, debugging, and skill sharing. After hours, he enjoys cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, playing tabletop games, and listening to Broadway.
Yeah, that's right.
So, awesome.
Okay, thank you. On a beautiful morning like this, I just want to pull some Hugh Jackman. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. All right. So a little intro on what this presentation is going to be about in case you want to go to the other one. This is the least prepared presentation that I have, and the reason that I did that, it was on purpose, was so that it could mostly be audience driven. What I want you all to do is I've got a catalog here, a local geodatabase that's actually a copy of my enterprise geodatabase from Springville. And I've had to become familiar with data that wasn't mine. I didn't home grow this, I'm not as familiar with it. And so I use Python to find out about data sets like I used to do with, select by attributes and sorting and those kinds of methods. One of the things I want to put out there right now, and I've said this before, so forgive me for being a broken record, is that I don't consider any GIS technology easy. I think that with practice and hard work, and in my case, making lots of mistakes, helps me learn the language or the technology even better. And that's the case here. If you're new to Python or new to programming, and you've got a kind of fear or anxiety about it, I just want to point out a few things. Number one, programming is not the be-all and end-all of being a GIS expert. You don't have to know how to program to do your job or to be an expert. This is just another tool in your tool belt. Batman, you're familiar with him, has the bat belt, which has these bat boomerangs and these ninja stars and shark repellent. I remember is one of those things. So he just uses the tool for the job, but at least he's got it on his person when he needs it. And I think that programming is just like that. It's another tool you can have to solve different problems, and there are advantages and disadvantages with it. The reason why I like programming with Python and other scripting languages is that it makes what I do repeatable. So if there's something I've done on one data set, like a lot of work with one data set, I can usually plug in a few other values, and now I'm doing the same work on another data set without so much clicking around. So without further ado, I'll show you Python and ArcPy and stuff like that. So when you have a new ArcGIS Pro project, you will not see a notebooks folder here. This magically appears when you create your first notebook under the Insert menu. What I mean is there won't be a folder to right-click on to do a new notebook, so you have to go up to Insert. I also want to demonstrate my humility. If there's something that you see I do and you're a programmer and would do it better or just differently, don't be afraid to call me out and we'll try it. We'll try a different way. Once your notebook is created, your notebook folder appears, but what I want to show you is that the folder structure of your application doesn't have a notebooks folder. It's not a Windows folder with your project. Basically what they've done is they've taken these IPNYB, which means IPython, that's the IPY, NB for notebook, and they just group them together in this logical folder. So now you know. If I want to rename one of these items, I rename it like I would a map or a layout just by right-clicking on it and giving it a new name. I typically don't do that, though, until I've got a good idea of what my script is doing. and I do not leave any production notebooks called new notebook. That's just bad. So there's always a few lines that I start every notebook with. I always import pretty much the same library. So I'm going to import, if I can spell it right, import ArcPy. I always tend to import pandas. When I press enter this is called a cell, by the way. It's a holding cell, an Excel spreadsheet cell, however you want to think about it. When I press enter within a cell, it just gives me a new line as if I was in a Word document or Notepad. I also want to say from ArcGIS, this is another library, I'm going to import one particular object called the GeoAccessor. Python, by way of some introduction, was named after Monty Python, the comedy troupe, which I believe in turn was named after the reptile of that name. And I don't see this so much anymore, but in a lot of the earlier documentation for Python, there were lots of references to Monty Python skits. You would see things like spam and stuff about, dead parrots, and it was all in the examples and stuff. So it was really quite funny, just tongue-in-cheek documentation. But in Python, case is very important. So if you have a variable with a small letter I, that's going to be very different, completely different than a variable with a capital letter I. And the way we tend to name things in Python is by starting them with a lowercase letter, and then subsequent words in that variable get their own capital letter. It's not wrong to do it other than that, but if you have other people that are going to be looking at your code, maintaining this kind of pseudo standard is a good idea. So now that I've written the code, I need to execute it. If any of you are familiar with idle, idle would run the command after you hit enter, and that's not the case with notebooks. You run one full cell at a time, whether it has one line or 100 lines in it. And there's three keyboard ways to run a cell. If you want to stay in the current cell, then you're going to press Control Enter. If you want to run the cell, create a new one, and move to the new one, that's Alt Enter. And then if you do Shift Enter, you're going to run the cell and move to the cell that exists below the cell you're working on. So I don't need to stay in this cell, so I'm going to do Alt Enter and let it run. This star means that the Python notebook is processing it. It's called a kernel, which is a kind of a compilation machine that is doing what you told it to do. Some statements execute very quickly and others more slowly. So it's still working on this. I don't have to wait for this to finish, but when it does, it'll get a 1. And what that means is that that's the first command I executed in this Python session. Okay. The other thing I want to... Sometimes you'll see this. I don't like it, but you'll see it. Import pandas as like PN or PD. That just gives it a short abbreviation so that you can use it later. I don't mind writing out the word pandas, and it's clearer to me, so I usually don't abbreviate. All right. So with a feature class in my map, I'm going to load it into what's known as a pandas data frame to examine it. So I'm going to say, I have to give it a variable name. So I'm going to say df for data frame hydrants equals. So I'm going to, whatever's on the right of that equal sign, I'm going to assign to the variable called df hydrants. And I'm going to put pandas, the name of the library, data frame, the name of the class, spatial, which is an extension that is provided by this GeoAccessor type, and then from underscore feature class, and then I'll use the words just like it's typed in the in my table of contents. And I'm going to stay on that cell, so I'm going to hit Control Enter. And with all the ways that I mentioned about running a cell, if your cell throws an exception or causes an error, you'll still stay on that cell. it wants you to fix whatever that is. Okay, now that I've got a cell, you see this blue bar over here? This means that I'm in command mode. And if I go to the help under keyboard shortcuts, I've learned a lot from this little window right here, and I have opened it many, many, many times. I don't want to keep going back and forth between the mouse and the keyboard so much. So being able to do most of what I want on a keyboard is very helpful. It's not wrong to use the mouse and the keyboard. It's just personal preference. But the keyboard shortcuts are separated into two categories. Command mode, which as I showed you is when you've got that blue bar over there, or edit mode. And in edit mode, that little bar to the left will be green. I hope it's clear which one is which. If you're typing, then you're in edit mode. So in this list of keyboard shortcuts in command mode, I can see that, I just want to find the shortcut. Extend, copy, paste, save, interrupt. What I'm looking for is a shortcut that I already know. I just want to show you where it's listed. Oh, here it is. Insert cell below. So insert cell above is an A, insert cell below is a B. This confused me for a long time now. Hopefully it makes you laugh. I kept thinking that B was before and A was after. That's the opposite of what they do. So above and below, not before and after. Okay, so since this cell executed successfully, I'm going to do B for below. And I'm still in command mode, so I can't type anything right now. I'm going to press enter to get into edit mode. Now it turned green. If you are blue-green colorblind, I don't know if there's a way to change that setting, but I think a Google search would be worth it. I myself am not colorblind, but I've had different managers who were, which makes cartography interesting. Okay. The other thing I want to show you is how to do what I just did on line 2 if if the layer that you're interested is in a group layer. So I'm going to go up here and do I'm going to do a new group layer, and I'm going to edit the name to be water. And I'm going to take all these these 2, 3 related water layers and put them underwater. Oh, morning humor. Okay, let's do df valves equals pandas data frame spatial feature class, and I'm going to do it wrong by typing water valves right here, and I'm going to run it. Okay, so I get this big long exception. And this gives me some meaningful information, but typically the information I want isn't at the top. It's usually at the bottom. So water valves does not exist. Oh my gosh, did I type it correctly? Capital W, there's an underscore. Yes, I typed it correctly, but I need to include the name of the group in front of it. So I'll do water // and I will see if that works. Control Enter. Okay, that worked. I'm mildly curious if / will work. And I'm going to put an R in front of it because backslashes have special meaning in Python, which I can touch on if you want to. But R says this is a raw string. Take it as is. Believe it. Okay, so that also worked. So backslashes or // to separate your group names from your layer names. Yes?
So now that you've moved your water fire hydrants into that group, if you were to run this kind of all again, this one big, would you throw an error on
Let's try. Let's try calling something on df hydrants and see if it gives us an error. One of the properties of data frames is what's called shape. Shape has nothing to do with GIS, actually. It doesn't have to do with geometry. What it does is it'll give you a tuple containing the number of rows and columns in your data frame. So if this throws an exception, we know that there's a disconnect. Okay, so it's still connected even though I moved it. Great question. See, I like that because I don't have this fully prepared presentation. I want you guys to help drive it. Yes, you.
If you reran column 2, it wouldn't work. It's just in memory right now, you believe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, if I reran this, I'll get an exception. Right? Yeah. Very good. Another thing I'll show is like, what if you have a layer that's not in your map? How do I grab something that's just in my catalog? I can't show you connecting to a geodatabase, but the string that you would use would be something like this. Let's do a raw string, and it would be like, I think it's the word database connections, \, and then like the full name of the data set the full name of the feature class without prepending it with the data set. So if I've got let's see, the name of let's say that the name of our enterprise geodatabase was EGDB, and that's an SQL database. This layer is owned by a user called sewer user, and the name of the data set is sewer manholes, like that. That should be sufficient enough to be able to grab that feature class out of your catalog and get a data frame on it. If it's not sufficient, oh shoot, I'm being recorded. I'm just kidding. Anyway, that's what my memory tells me you do, is you do database connections, etc. Now a word on this, on database connections. Database connections, as you may already know, are simply little small files on your operating system, and they usually end with the extension .sde. So when you create catalog connections in ArcMap, these SDE files are stored in like %appdata%. That's a shortcut to a place on your hard drive under your username. %appdata%, \, like Esri, \, ArcGIS, \, desktop, 10.8, and then you eventually get to a folder called either catalog or arc catalog, and that's where your SDE files are stored. So what I used to do when upgrading ArcMap is I used to go to that folder in my previous version, copy all my SDE files, go to that same folder for my new desktop version, and paste. So what does that have to do with ArcGIS Pro and notebooks? If you're going to reference an SDE file, you know, I did forget something there. It was database connections. / the name of your connection file. My geodatabase .sde / everything else I said before. So this SDE file, you need to copy that and put it in the same folder as your script. In Arc Pro, it's going to work fine because it can find it based on this syntax. But if you create a brand new script to run elsewhere, like under Jupyter, then you'll need that SDE file in the same folder. Now let's suppose you don't want it in the same folder. Well, then your script needs to provide the full path of where to find the SDE file. SDE files are also great because they encrypt the password to your database within it, and so you can't. Anyway, it's just nice because then your script doesn't have to have the password for the connection. Okay, so let's have some more fun with these data frames. If this is a brand new data set for all of us, right? We're just jumping into it. It's day one on our job. What would you want to know about the fire hydrant layer? Louder? What fields there are? Okay, let's do df hydrants dot columns. Okay, so we've got object ID, global ID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like they're doing user tracking, right? Because they've got these fields here. And then up here, when we did shape, this is how many rows, this is how many columns. So there will be 23 fields, and there's currently 1,609 hydrants. What would be another thing to get to know the data set?
What projection everything's in the geodatabase?
Oh, just right click. Okay, I couldn't do that through data frames, but I could do it using ArcPy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the web, and I'm going to go find, let's see, I think I have it as a favorite under programming, or just Pro Python reference. And your question is what coordinate system, right? So I'm going to type in the Pro coordinate system, and hopefully that is enough to lead me to a good help file. Coordinate systems, projections and transformations. Specify? No, I don't want to specify one. I don't want to define a new one. Let's go with the first one and see what that tells us. I skip a lot of the text a lot of times. I try to find examples, but this one, support, download a list. Okay, let me see if we can get it by what's in. Let's see if this is already ArcPy. I'll go ahead and type ArcPy anyway. Find a coordinate system. Yeah, or find out what wiki ID it is. I'm missing the D, but spatial reference is good. All this typing in front of y'all is just like, you guys have seen it, right? Trying to help somebody, you're looking over their shoulder, and I normally don't type like this, really. I don't want to list the spatial references. Just Pro Python reference. Okay. Coordinate to processing.
I think it's under describing data.
It's under what?
I think it's under describing data. That's how you find this result.
Okay.
Describe.
Okay. Let's try that. And is it ArcPy dot describe, and then you put in the name of the data set?
I think so. And then dot spatial reference.
Okay. Let's try that. Water, fire, hydrants. It might be a class.
Capitalized.
Okay. So I found a catalog path. Let's do for additional help. One of the things I don't like about the pop-up in the pop-up window is that I can't see the URL that I'm on. I've tried right-clicking and stuff like that to find the URL, but I have not been able to. Yeah, accept the cookies. Layer properties. Okay, so layer, if it's capitalized, that's got to be a class. So maybe if I create, I always like the code here. Yeah, they just do describe. Print some properties of the feature layer. So this is a describe object. Okay, what if I do that? Let's do, I'm going to put another cell below with B, and I'm going to see DESC equals ArcPy describe water. Okay, I'm already tired of writing water, fire hydrants, so I'm going to create a variable, FH, and that's going to equal water. I'll do water, fire, hydrants. Did I spell that right? Okay. I'll Alt-Enter to create a new cell. So I'm going to say DESC equals ArcPy describe, and I'll do FH, Alt-Enter, and DESC dot, and I'm pressing Tab to see if it has any help for me. Let's do for D in desk, print D. Maybe description. Maybe a description is an iterator object.
Is there no code completion in notebooks?
There is, but I'm surprised that it didn't show it. And it could be because describe returns an object with dynamic fields, but normally I have pretty good luck with dot, tab, and waiting a second. So I'm not sure why it's not doing that with this. Now, you know, oh,
I don't know if this
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right, let's do. Okay, I called it a method, but maybe it's a property. Okay, so not finding it, I'm going to get out of the pro help, and because a lot of times you'll find questions that are answered on like Stack Overflow and stuff like that. So I'm gonna have really bad English here. I'm going to say Python arcpy find the coordinate system of a layer. Spatial reference. We talked about that, how to print the spatial reference of a feature class. And it's doing Python, and parameter text, list feature classes. Okay, so they do have a scribe, and then they have spatial reference as a lowercase thing, so let's do that. So let's go DESC spatial reference. Hey, cool. All right, now can I even get further and just get the WIC ID? By the way, I hope this is helpful. Like, you can see that I'm just trying stuff, like maybe that'll work, and it's not like I'm going to blow something up if I do something on accident. Spatial reference, get attribute WIC ID does not exist. Factory code, yeah. You guys are awesome. You guys are going to do great at this back at the office. Really, we're skill sharing, right? We're working with each other. 3566, great.
That's different.
What's that?
Well, there's two.
There's two factory codes.
The projected one.
Yeah.
Oh,
For the coordinate system.
interesting.
Which you needed like call like number one
We could do.
in the array.
Well, I did try and use it as an iterator. Maybe spatial reference is an iterator. I'm going to do for prop in spatial reference. And then I'm just going to say print prop. And not working. So I'm thinking that a lot of this stuff with descriptions isn't iterable. But anyway, with a little bit of work, we could figure out the factory code for the projection and for the coordinate system. So thank you for that. What else might you want to know about your fire hydrant layer that you're now in charge of or have to do something with?
The most recent edit.
Most recent edit. Okay. So I'm going to type df hydrants and just press Control Enter because I want to stay on this cell. And what that'll do is it'll show me the first 5 and the last 5 layers of the data set. Notice that I did not use a print statement. This is like an inherent thing that you can do with that object. If you just call it, it'll show this data. And it's already formatted with these striations. See this gray and this white, and how you hover over it, it's blue. That's all embedded in some stylization code related to data frames. So if I want to see who last edited it, I'm going to go, not who, you want to know the when, right? All right. So the last edited user, and I'm sure it's the last field that I didn't scroll over far enough to see. Last edited date. Okay, so first I want to get a handle on just that column. That's what I want to try first. I'm going to do a left bracket, treating it as if it's an array or a matrix. And I'm going to do last edited date, and I'm just going to press Control Enter because I want to stay here. Okay, so there's a bunch of nats, and I believe that means not a time. Nan is short for not a number, and so that's got to be what nat is not a time. So let's do a dot, and so tab's not showing me anything there. Let's just do max, maybe. Okay, that worked. And I was just totally guessing. And you could also see I had a quick pop-up there. It was a little delayed. And maybe it's my internet connection, or I don't know. But so it looks like the last edit was 12/20 of 2017. So 5 days before Christmas, 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So great. So now we know that either no one's been maintaining the feature class for that long, or maybe user tracking was turned off at some point. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but if you turn user tracking off, it doesn't go remove all those fields, does it? Yeah, it keeps them. So maybe that's what happened. And then you can start asking questions and asking around. What else you guys want to know about my fire hydrants layer?
How many different, like if you have a domain of some kind in
Okay.
one of your columns, how many of each?
Yeah, let's look to see what might be a domain. Which one? What?
Condition.
Condition. Okay. Yeah, I do have hearing aids and they're working, but you cannot whisper. All right. So let's do DF hydrants. Oh, not DY. DF hydrants and condition. Was it all caps? Okay. And I'll just do Control Enter to see it. Okay, there's my values. Let me also take a little break and tell you what I've just done. A data frame is made up of what are called series. So a series is a full column of data. When I go to the Pandas help, which you can Google online, but I have it as a shortcut, the Pandas API, you'll notice that series is an object type over here on the left. If I'm trying to do something and I can't figure it out, but at least I know I've got a series on my hands, then I can look in that help for specific methods. Here's how I can even prove that it's a series. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to use Python's type function. Oops, all lowercase, all lowercase. And so I've closed it off in round parentheses. I'm going to do Control Enter because I want to stay put. That wasn't good. Let me do a print statement out of that. Okay, that's what it was. So I've printed the type, and it's telling me that it's a Pandas Core Series. This is the name of the class type. This is probably the name of the file. This is the name of the library, Pandas Core. So now I know what help to look at, what help I care about. This can be very important when you're like looping or digging into other objects and you're trying to figure out what am I working with. The type function will tell you. Okay, so we want to find out about unique values within the hydrant condition. So before, my habit when I do this, I don't do the unique function first. I do the n unique, which is going to give me a number of unique values rather than all of them. Okay, pressure's on. Come on. Oh, there's no dot. All right, so 2. So now I've like, okay, I'll go ahead and print those unique values. I'm going to do a cell below, DF hydrants, and I'm going to do condition, and then a dot after that bracket, and just do unique. And so it's a 0 or a 1. Now, what they mean is kind of interesting. So as of right now, the Pandas library will give you the raw data from your feature class or data set. It doesn't give you the interpreted domain display values. And I believe there's an idea in the ArcGIS Ideas website to be able to put that as an option when you're importing a feature class as a data frame. I think they're going to add a new parameter where you can opt to grab the display values of those drop-down fields rather than the raw value. And I know that some efforts have already been made towards that end, but I don't think it's in the published API right now. So a 0 and a 1. Condition could be good or bad. It could be yes or no. We don't know that. But if I looked at the raw attribute table, I could. What are some other things you want to know about fire hydrants?
Can you get a count of how many of each of those there are?
Yeah, I can. So the question was, can we get a count of how many 0 conditions there are and how many 1 conditions there are? And for that, I'm going to do a group by. And I usually want to assign a variable to the result of the group by function so I can use it over and over again. So I'm going to say group FH equals DF hydrants condition and dot group. Oh, no, not that. I want to do dot group by condition, and I think I want to do axis equals 1 below. Then I want to do group FH count. No, it's not sum. Maybe it's without parentheses. No. What was it? Okay, so I'm going to go back to my help, and I'm going to go to my group by object over here. Groups, indices, apply, aggregate, all, any.
Capital.
It is a count. Did I do a capital C?
I don't think you did a capital G.
Oh.
Your group by.
Yeah.
And your variable.
Oh. Oh, was this supposed to be...
Capital G, capital B.
Let me see. Well, that's for the class. The method would have had it lowercase. If I go down to, not function application, computations, reindexing. Did I pass it?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm going to close my eyes. You guys tell me when to stop.
There you go.
Right there.
Okay. Group by in window. So the group by is in lowercase, and then it wants to know by, and then I already provided the axis. So let me just try it again. Maybe I just missed group FH dot COUNT parentheses. What does it want? So operands could not be broadcast together with shapes 23, 1609, and 22. Okay, I think I might know what that has to do with. And this is based on personal experience and hours of research. I believe the problem, and this has been submitted as a bug, is that if your featured data set contains a small integer field that contains no values, some functions don't work. Isn't that crazy? That is just I mean, so let's check out fire hydrants and go to the actual attribute table. I want to find what the field types are here, because I'm now wondering if condition is a small int field if it only contains zeros and ones. Oh, I want to do fields view. Yeah, it's a short. So we happen to pick a bad field that was a short that has some null values in it. My bad. Can we do another one though, just for completion's sake? Can we group on another field?
So there's a few more domains and some other ones.
Okay.
It's just a count. You could like do number of rows and subset it by 1.
Number of rows.
Like, can you subset the data frames where that
Yes.
column is 1 and then number of rows?
Yes, I think I can. Okay, let's try that. I'm going back to my new notebook, and I'm going to delete a cell, you don't right click or anything like that. You press D twice. All right, so to get a portion of the data frame where it just equals 1, I have to go into a little bit of a side note so that you understand what it is that I'm doing. We're going to do DF hydrants, and we're going to do condition again. And we're going to say double equals 1. Single equal is for assignment. I want whatever's on the right to be assigned to whatever I've got on the left. Double equals is a test. You're testing if something are equal to each other. Okay, see how I get all these trues and falses back? This would have been the case if I had used a greater than symbol or less than, or whether or not it converts to a float or whatever it is. It just gives me a series of true falses. But I want to see the rows where that occurs. And for that, I'm going to use the loc function. df hydrants dot loc bracket. And now I'm going to take everything that I have here and copy it. And I'm going to put it in this array index. And I'm going to press Control Enter. And voila, I have you can see that row 3 and 5 are now missing because their condition was not equal to 1. Now, I believe that the syntax for this looks a little weird at first. Like, why is this, how does this create a subset? The magic of this is, and I have used this in real life before, you can provide it with any Boolean array that is as long as your data frame, and you will get those records back. How you obtain that Boolean array is up to you, but you can do all these tests and manipulations, and as long as you've got a Boolean array that's just as tall as your table, it will return only those rows where true is. And it's really quite fascinating. Short for location, not Loki, the Marvel villain. But this is a really good way to subset your data set. And you can see that it's like a where clause, but I'm not using SQL. I'm not using that syntax. I could have something very complex that I'm testing for equality for, and this will show it, because then I have access to the full Python library, not just the limitations of SQL of your database. So it's really quite nice. So this function also returns a brand new data frame, but it hasn't been assigned to a variable. It's been displayed, but I could keep it elsewhere, and that data frame will now be independent of my original data frame. So I'm going to call this my good conditions. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to find out how many there are. So do you guys remember the property? What property do I use to find the length and width? Shape. That's right. Okay, so 1,274 rows return to 1. We'll see how many also return to 0. So what do I want to do? I want to copy and paste what I previously did, but I want to leave what I did alone. So I'm at that cell after the active one where I was at. So I'm going to turn the 1 into a 0. I'm going to run it with Control Enter. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to copy this one, C, V. I called it good conditions. These are bad conditions. I should have modified it. The dangers of copying and pasting, everybody. But at least my previous values are still visible. So now I've got my counts. My 1,274 1 conditions and my 335 0 conditions. These are great questions. So we're getting to know the data set, right? We're doing all these queries. We're not affecting anything. We're not deleting or changing anything. Anything that we do in the data frame, if we do decide to delete fields and records and stuff like that, there's no connection to the original feature class. So you are safe to try all sorts of things that mess that up. And it's fun too. Another word on the group by the way. This whole thing axis equals 1. I'll explain that. A lot of methods on data frames, they work on rows. They work at the row level. The row is the most important thing. And so a lot of the functions will be expecting indexes to the rows that you want to do stuff on. But by saying index equals 1, it means, no, this isn't a row operation. This is a column operation. That's what that's all about. Axis equals 1. Okay. Let me scroll back up to hydrants. Do you guys want to try another layer like mains, valves, or sewer stuff? Yeah. Maybe type. Type could be interesting. Let's do the group by. I'm going to copy that, go to the bottom. I'm going to paste it with V, and I'm going to say I'll reuse the variable. So whatever was stored there before is now going to be overwritten by this new operation. What was it called? Type. Huh? I like that. Okay. Now this still might not work because of the existence of that small int field, and if it doesn't, I'll just remove it out of the data frame. Okay, that's it. It's got to go. All right, so how do I remove it from the data frame? I'm going to use a method called drop. df hydrants drop, and I'm going to specify what I want to drop. and then and it was called condition. Condition. Do I need to do brackets? And by the way, I'm purposely doing something wrong here that doesn't throw an exception. Oh, it's not. Ah, yes, it was. It's DF hydrants. Oh. Okay. All right. I just said about access. I forgot to put it in the method. So this returns a data frame. You can see here, and if I were to scroll over, you wouldn't see the condition field. But it did something that you might not expect. I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to have it recall the DF hydrants data set. You know what? I'm tired of doing 10 rows. I'm just going to do the top 3. So I'm going to call head with the 3. There it is. What? I dropped it. It should be gone. Well, what Pandas does is it returns a brand new data frame with that column dropped. So if I really want it gone, I can either assign this to a new variable and start using that variable for future operations, but you can also use a parameter called inPlace and set it to true, and that'll drop it from the actual data frame. Now if I run this top 3 rows and I scroll over, then condition will be gone. So.
Could you redefine the same variable, just like self-referential DF hydrants?
Yep, I could have said DF hydrants equals DF hydrants dot drop. Yep, not wrong. More than one way to. I don't like saying the skin of cat because I kind of like cats. More than one way to. Come on, help me out. More than one way to what?
So
Bake a pie? Oh man. Okay, but again, that's sort of the beauty of it. Is there's all these ways to do things. So I'm going to run this group by again, and this time I'm going to do Shift Enter because I want to move to the cell below after I've run it, and then Control Enter, and I still get that blasted error. Operands could not be broadcast together with shapes 22, etc. All right. Well, another possibility is to when I originally import the fire hydrants layer, I can do a comma and then like list columns, and then in brackets have a comma delimited list of fields that I'm interested in bringing into the data frame. Like a lot of other ArcGIS tools, this method to create a data frame from a feature class, it'll work on your current selection set in your map. So if you accidentally selected one feature to find out about it, your data frame is going to be awfully short. So make sure that you've got that. You can also, if you want, specify a where clause in this parameter and only get features that fit certain SQL criteria. So those are other options. You can't find out about the spatial data frame methods on the Pandas main API page, but there is stuff that Esri has provided for spatial data frames. I thought I had it bookmarked, but a Google search is just as well to find out about those. Spatial data frames, of course, are only, they have a few more methods because this shape field comes in usually at the end, but I don't think it's always at the end, and you can reference the shape field's properties. Let's actually do that. Let's create a new cell because shapes are objects. They're not floats, booleans, strings. They're objects, and so there's a special way to access that. So let's do DF hydrants, and we'll do shape here, and we'll first just get that one column, that one series. All right, so that's what it looks like. So if I want all the X values, I'm going to try some things. So I'm going to try .x and see if that gets me anywhere. No. Okay. What about a bracket with an X string in it? Nope. So it is a JSON. Thing. So what about a dot? And then I would be referencing the shape itself. Would I? I doubt this is going to work. Yeah. And I've done it before. I did it just a few days ago, accessing the shape property. I'm trying to remember if it's an object and if it's referenced, because this is in JSON. And usually with JSON, you put square brackets, and then in double quotes or single quotes, you put the property that you want from it. But why am I not? Oh, maybe because that's returning. I'm trying to do that off of the whole series. All right, let's just get one shape. So one of the things that you can do with these data frames is you can access one single value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use I at. That means no, I don't want I at. I want just regular at. The first thing it wants is what row do I want. So I'm just going to put 0. That's the name of the index. So I'm looking at this number right here. And then what column I want and that shape. I know what it's doing. It's drawing it. I think it's trying to draw a point right there. So now if I do X here, okay, there's my X value. Spatial data frames in Python notebooks will draw to your little window. So if I had if I was doing this on the sewer mains class, it would draw the sewer line when I access the shape field. Rather than just talk about it, let's actually do that for a bit. Let's do df sewer mains equals pandas dot data frame spatial from underscore feature class, and then do it's not in a group, so just sewer mains gravity. Then we'll do df sewer mains shape, and that returns those. And so then if I do at and I grab one shape, let's just do 3000. See that? That's the sewer line that it draws for me. But then if I want an actual property out of that, like now this is actually going to look different. Let me do shape. Let me just do print, because then I might get what it looks like rather than the graphical representation of it. Okay, so I've got something called paths, and then I've got this triple array. It's an array inside of an array inside of an array. So here's what that means. Let me go to Paint. Okay, I'm going to draw some lines here. I'm going to make them nice and thick so you can see them. I'm going to use green for sewer lines. Where's MJ? Did you recognize this, MJ? All right. So, in a polyline symbol, you can have parts, and you can do this with polygons too. So, if you were here for, if you just know, how do programmers count? They start from 0. So, what's that?
That's the language you're using.
Yeah. Does it? Yeah, Visual Basic I think used a lot of ones, but you're right. And sometimes it depends on the object that you're using. Some objects are indexed off of 1. Python strings, not Python. Delphi strings are indexed off of 1. Okay. So if I was reading this Python shape, then there would be this path, which would be like all of this would be the first path, and then this would be the first part, the second part, and the third part, and then you'd find the little tuples in parentheses of the coordinates of each of those vertices. So if I go back to this first bracket is the path, and I believe there's always one path. I could be wrong. And then I'm starting in on the parts, and then here, oh, it's not a tuple, it's actually a list of coordinates, of XY coordinates. So in this case, we're talking about a line that only has two vertices, your simplest kind of line. So let's say that I want the first x and the last x. Let's assign this to a variable though. My line equals, and if I am selecting text, I do have to do Control C if I want to copy that. So my line equals that shape, and now I want my line 0 here is going to mean the first path. 0 here is going to mean the first part, and 0 here is going to be the first part of the coordinate, which is the x. And I think I know what I'm doing here. I think I know what I'm forgetting here, is that I need paths. What's that? Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. In fact, I didn't even read the error message. I was just presuming it was because I didn't access paths. Okay, so my line, then you have to use paths because this is a JSON object, and this property has a name. Before I was working with a nameless. No, X was named. Never mind. Forget what I was saying just there. So I want to access the paths property of this JSON object, the first path of the first part, and the X of the coordinate. Now let's say that I want the last of these things. I'm going to do, and if you are editing and now you want to get into command mode, you can press escape. Funny, spelled just like escape. Press B, and now I'm in a new cell. Press enter, and now I'm in edit mode. Now I'm going to access the very last point in this by doing a -1. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I forgot the S on paths. -1. And if I want the last x coordinate, I still have to do a 0 here because x's are always listed first. So if we look at the printed version of this, this is this, and 1602.201 is that. So if you have a really long line, represents a river, a police chase, or whatever you want to do, you can access beginning and end information. -1 always means the last item in an array or a list or something like that. And I don't know, you can just do different stuff with that. But that's how you access the geometry. It took me a while to figure it out, so I thought I'd show you how to use the spatial part of a spatial data frame. Spatial data frames also have other methods. I think they have like extent, which will show you the bounding box of your data. We can try that just to make sure I'm not blowing smoke. df sewer mains dot extent. Let me try it with parentheses. Also no data frame. So I would go back to my help here. Do a spatial data frame extent. So another thing that I'm trying to enable with my presentation today is that, yes, there are ways to find out about all this information with right-clicking, but with some clever work, you can script things to be repeatable and do it over and over with different data sets. You might want to run like a health check, right? So you have this loop, it's going through your feature classes, and you're making sure that your utility feature classes always have at least 1,000 features to make sure that no one has done some mass deletions. You can also, I don't know, the possibilities are just, they're quite endless. So let's see. What I'm doing is I'm just looking for whatever property it would be that would give me that extent. And I'm starting to wonder if it would be a another part of the describe. This also, I can see this page actually has some really good examples.
I think for extent was just above a little.
Spatial B box.
One above that.
Oh, thank you. Now, another thing that you can do on web pages like that is that once Google has taken you to the page, do Control F and just find on page. Okay, so there's my bounding box, min X, min Y, max X, max Y. Very good, very good. I think we're an hour in. We have like a half hour more. I can show you some other stuff that you can do with data frames. As far as figuring out more about the data set. Let's do,
Question.
yeah, please.
So, a lot of what we've been looking at is just kind of getting familiar with the data. Is there a way to take, to update the data frame? So, let's say that we were looking at the conditions.
Yeah.
Condition field.
Mhm.
Let's say we filled in those null values in the data frame. Is there a way to take that and put that back into the original feature class?
There is, and there's a way that I would do it, but I also understand that there was a presentation in this conference about editing with spatial data frames. Is that presenter in this class? Did one of you attend it that saw him edit data with a data frame? What was the general concept of how they did it?
He just exported as a new one, I think.
Oh, okay. So what I would do is I would export after fixing or changing the data in my data frame, I would use the to _ CSV or to _ table, whatever format I wanted it in, to get it into something else, and then I would join on a primary key and field calculate over. Now I don't have to do that all with, my fingers. I could script that field calculate to go from one to the other. I would add a join and stuff.
So you can't overwrite directly from the data frame?
I hesitate to say that you can't because I'm always learning new things. There may be a way that you can. I just don't know it.
I think that there was there's the from feature class.
There is, which I use to import it.
That there's also two feature classes.
Right, but it always creates a brand new feature class. It doesn't go change the data in place with what you've got, right?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not well with Canvas at this point.
Yeah,
You could overwrite it and it could be functionally the same.
now that's an interesting idea. If you give it the same name as the old one, yeah. Overwriting it could cause a problem with any feature class that you've got with global IDs, because all those global IDs will be overwritten. Now that might not matter to you, but like in my case where I've got an asset management system tied to asset IDs, that could be a problem. Being able to just export a new table, join, field calculate, and then undo that join would be safe enough in my environment. Again, more than one way to do these things. So the answer is yes, but it doesn't sound like there is a direct way to do it. Very good. there are also different math functions that you can do on an entire data frame at once. So let's say that you've got a light pole class and you want to know, what are the average heights of my light poles or telephone poles, or maybe you've got things that represent different chemical measurements, acidic values. All of these types of numbers can be summarized all at once with yet, I believe it's another describe function. So if I do df hydrants, this might not even be the best one to do it on. That's not it. Bound method. Okay, so what describe in parentheses does for you is it first finds all of your numerical attributes. Notice I didn't have to specify any of them. And for every field, it shows me the number of values, the number of non-empty values, the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, and then here's your quartile values. Object ID is a numeric field, but its statistics don't matter. But that's okay. I'm not going to punish pandas for that. But any other fields that you have, if we actually do it on DF sewer mains, we'll actually get the shape length field that it will do some analysis on. So that might be a little more interesting. DF sewer mains dot describe with parentheses. Oh, cool. We've also got some upstream flows and downstream flows. So that's really good data. Just imagine the number of SQL statements or the number of ArcGIS toolbox tools that you would need to run to get this same information. So quite a time saver there. It does give you a nice picture into your data. And I believe this returns its own data frame. So you can do data frame stuff on the result. Let's do df stuff, df sewer mains dot describe. Let's do alt enter to run it, and then let's do print type df stuff. So it's a data frame. So now I can do all the other data frame operations I was used to doing on the results of the describe operation. It's very retrospective, right? So a good, this is great because it's giving you your mins and maxes, and let's say that all you cared about was the maxes. Now I can't put a max in here because this thinks that I want a column. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a I think I do want loc and max. Yeah. So it doesn't return it in a horizontal shape anymore. Like that's not how it's displayed visually. But what it's done is it's grabbed. It's not a series. I think it's a NumPy array is what I've got here when I wanted just one row of data. So there it is. It's telling me the max cracks rating is 4, the max debris rating in my data set is also 4, blah, 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 yeah. Now, if you do want to know all your field types all at once, there's a way to do that too. Let's do df hydrants D types. D type stands for data types, and unfortunately these are Python data types. So the fact that my global IDs and all that stuff are objects, in Python strings are objects, so that's why I get that. But I can see that other fields are date time, int64, etc. So, and we no longer see the condition field here, if you recall, because we dropped it earlier in the presentation. Oh, and we've even got a geometry shape at the end. That's pretty cool. Oh, how about this? You've probably run into this before. Let's say that you've got a string field, which I'm sure we do, and I want to know what the longest value is. You might have a string field that's like 50 or 100 or 255 characters long, but you're going to make a new data set, and you don't need it to be that long. In SQL Server, I can't in the database go shorten a field. It won't let me do that. It'll allow me to make it longer, but I can't shorten it. So if I'm making a new feature class. Maybe this is an opportune time for me to get the field column width down to a manageable size. So how would I do that? The way that I would do that is with the is by creating a new. There's several ways, several ways, but I'm going to create a brand new column, and it's going to contain the lengths of strings in a particular field, and then I'm going to use another function to get the longest, the highest value of that. So if I look at my let's take address. Address is a perfect example. In our data set, address is actually a field that is 150 characters wide. Well, what would we really need to do to store this information? So I'm going to say df hydrants adder len. This is a brand new field, remember, and I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do it wrong on purpose. I want the length of df hydrants address. Oh, it did work. Silly me. Maybe it was because of a method with one parameter. Well, let's see those new values. df hydrants. You try doing this. You tell me if you don't make any mistakes. All right. I want two fields now. So since I want two fields instead of one, I have to put another set of brackets in here because I'm doing a Python list of field names. I want address, and I also want adderlen. I think there's a song in Guys and Dolls that sounds like that. Adderlen. Adderlen. Oh, that's the character's name. All right. So this didn't seem to work very well. We've got 1,609 all the way down, and that's not what I intended. So we're gonna use the apply function this time. Apply is really good. It allows you to call a function on each individual value within, or you can use multiple values. So I'm gonna show you a simple example of that. So I'm gonna do hydrants adderlen. Since the field already exists, I might as well apply. And I almost always never do this correctly the first time, so bear with me. I'm going to create a lambda function, and this parameter x is actually going to be filled in with my the data frame row. And so what I want is x address, but I want its length. And I have to remember to put that axis equals 1 on that.
You have D in there.
Apply lambda. Oh, do I not need it in this case? Int object is not subscriptable. Okay, here's what I'm going to do instead. This is a way that I'm more sure that it'll work. Remember, I never get this right the first time. I've always got to play around with it. And of course, I can look back to code that I've written before. I don't know that I have all that. Oh, okay. This error right here is legitimate. So what it's telling me is that one of my address values is null, and you can't call length on a null object. So I'm going to add a little bit more complexity here. What I'm going to say is if x address, so if I get anything back, if it's not a null value, then I want the length of it. I'm going to already give this a new line. And new lines also are a little tricky in Python to know how to do the indentation correctly. And else has to be followed by a colon. 0. Invalid syntax, of course. Let me put lambda on the next line. Oh, I can also select several lines and press tab and invalid syntax again. Okay, what if I do lambda x, copy this. Sorry for being boring. Do you want me to sing while I type? That would be quite the skill, huh?
Guys and dolls.
I'm trying to think of even one song from Guys and Dolls. I love the musical. Yeah, that's exactly what I need right now. Luck, if you've ever been a lady to begin with, luck be a lady tonight. Okay, so I want this. I want that value if... Nope, that's not what I want either. I'm really close. I can tell I'm really close. I want the length of address if that's even a value, else I just want 0. All right. All right, just like Sky Masterson, I have won the bet and I've accomplished something. So let's take a look at this. Now, I'm not going to copy and paste this. I'm going to run this in place. Yes! Yes, okay. All right. So this is what I did. Lambda x. Lambda means this is an unnamed function. I'm not going to call it anything. The x here, this parameter, is the current row because I'm saying axis equals 1. And I'm going to say, okay, grab the address column and check its length. But only do this if there is a value, like if x address. If x address is none, then this condition is false, and it will run to the else statement, which is 0. So for all of my null values, which you can see here, their length is now 0. So now what do I want? I want the maximum value of that column, df hydrants.
So your if statement goes after your function?
Yes and no. Inline if statements can go that way.
Okay.
And they're not written like I would normally say it. So what it is you put the value that you want first. Then your condition is after the if, and then your whatever is after your else. You saw that I tried to do the if first, but I couldn't get the syntax right when it came to the enters and the indentation. So I just did it inline this way. Those of you that know C and C++ know about the tertiary statement. This is like Python's version of that, where you have value, question mark, thing, colon. I really went off the rails there. I apologize. That just sort of came out of me. I must be sick. But let's get the maximum value of that column. Ha! Our longest address is 45 characters long. So maybe it would make sense in the next data set to make the field 50 characters or something like that. And again, you can script this. You can iterate over all of your columns that are strings that have type object and find their longest values and have a neat little spreadsheet of that. Some good results. So multiple ways to do that too, right? I've used Excel to find the longest string value in a column before. And so this is a programmatic way to do it right in Pro. Again, it's not the only way, even in Python, to do this function, but it's the one that made sense to me. How are we doing on time now? How much time do I have left? 12 minutes? Okay. When your scripts are going to stick, okay, let's say that I was doing a legitimate project here, and this is gonna live hopefully longer than I'm there or whatever. I also have short-term memory loss. Wait, what did I just say? All right. Anyway, what you want to do is you want to document your scripts. Don't assume anything about your future self or the person that comes after you, and I'll show you how to document in a Python notebook. So one way to document in Python notebook is just by using Python comments. And Python comments are useful for two things. If you want to comment out a line of your code, it will not run. It won't execute. And that's a way to kind of debug code. But a comment is done with this little hash symbol. So with this hash symbol, let me go up above here. I'm gonna do a carriage return, and I'm gonna make a little documentation. The adder len field will contain the length of the address value in that row. So if someone's coming into this, or I'm coming into this later, and they're not as familiar with Python, this little bit of code can help them understand what it is that you're doing. But you can also make notebook comments, and that is done by changing the cell's type. You've been seeing this in all along, in, out, in, out. This is all your code. But you can make it so that a cell is not code by going to cell type, and call it Markdown. So Markdown, I'm going to go ahead and just type this is some documentation. Now when I run the cell, you'll notice that the font changed and the gray background went away. So this looks like, a Word document. This is it's not monospaced font anymore. And you can actually do some other cool things with this. So I'm going to go back into edit mode by pressing enter. And I'm going to say this is important in my opinion. You can already see that the editor has italicized important, but when I run the cell, it stays italicized as well. You can also do underscore. You can also do double asterisks, which makes it bold. You can also make bullet points. Oh, by the way, notice that even though this is 2 lines, when I ran it, it became 1. If you need 2 separate paragraphs, you have to separate it with an empty line. So it's kind of like HTML in that way a little bit. You can make bulleted lists, A, B, C, and that ends up with clean, nice little bullets there. And then I think I can also do numbered lists. Nope. Help me out, guys. What was the numbered list syntax? Is it just 1, 2, 3? Oh, maybe it's a period.
Are you going to sing Michael Jackson now?
Yeah, when he was little. Those notes are really high. I don't know if I can hit those today. Okay, yeah. So the correct answer was C. It was putting dots after the numbers. So what would you put in documentation? I tend to put the author myself in there in case there's any questions by someone else who looks at the documentation. I will put in the name of the stakeholder who's asking for this. Why am I doing it? I'll even go to say like where these results are going to be used. And for the simple stuff, like I have to assume that my reader knows some Python. Like if I'm adding 2 numbers together, I'm not going to document that, 1 + 2 or whatever. But when I get into some kind of the complex code, I try to describe not just the what, because a competent Python reader can read the what. I want to describe the why and the how. That's the most difficult. If I'm assigning the letter O to a field, I can see that I'm doing that, but why? Why am I doing that? It's obvious to me now because I'm in the zone. This is what I do. I need to do this. But the documentation will help me remember why I did that. Oh, because O meant outstanding, they were outstanding in their bill, or O meant that they were outside of the area of interest. Whatever it is, just document. And you'll really save yourself, your future self, some pain and suffering as you go over that code. Because if it's been a month since I've been into the code, or 2 months, good luck, Roger, remembering why you were doing that. And so I just think it's very important. We probably just have a few minutes left, is my guess. What, 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions or any other samples you'd like me to run through? Okay. let me just do one little thing here. So R done at springville.org. I'm going to change that to a markdown and run it. So you can see that hypertext and email addresses become links when you've executed documentation code. That's really helpful too, because you can put links out to your your portal, ArcGIS Online, documentation, or even like the website where your results are going to be posted, whatever it is. So feel free to reach out to me about Python questions. As you saw, I'm not the be-all, end-all expert, and all of you have something to add and to share. So as a community, we rely on each other, help each other out. And anyway, thanks for coming to my presentation, and hope you gleaned a little bit out of it. And Jupyter's the same thing as a notebook, but it runs in a web browser.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. This session is ArcGIS Quick Capture UGIC to Deployment, Easy as Pie, and it's going to be presented by Sean Beecher. And so Sean Beecher is the GIS administrator for Spanish Fork City and has been since 2003. Sean has been doing GIS and IT for over 26 years. Sean has a BS from BYU in GIS and cartography, received his GISP certificate in 2011. He presented at UVGIS, UGIC, Esri SWUC, and Esri UC, and has an article in the fall 2018 ARC News. He served as the UVGIS secretary and president, and currently serves on the UGIC board and is a proud member of UMIT. He is a strong advocate of GIS, and his motto is, if you build it, they will come. He loves seeing excitement in others as GIS improves their lives. When not at work, he enjoys spending time with family, canoeing, fishing, swimming, camping, boating, exploring Utah, and just being outside. And so it's excited to have Sean. I've served with him, and he does a good job. So thank you, Sean.
Thank you. So this is going to be kind of a two-part thing. One of it is a little bit technical, but the other one is more making those wins. One of the things that I found out is that if you can get even the small wins of getting something that your bosses will help make them look better, or maybe even make the lives of some of your fellow employees easier, better, whatever, then that is a win, because it helps them. One, makes their life easier. They can get the information that they need better. And not only that, it provides that support that now, instead of you saying, I need this, I need this, I need this, now you have somebody else saying, hey, look at what they did here. This is helping us. We're doing better. We're more efficient. We're whatever it may be. And now that helps them promote you as well. And so that's kind of a two-part here. How many people want to really make their bosses happy and want them to like what you're doing? Pretty much everybody, right? Well, one of the easiest ways to do that is to take information you learn from UGIC and go and implement it. If it's something that's going to, like I said, make it easier, better, faster, whatever, go home and implement it. And what I found out at the last UGIC conference, they talked about this ArcGIS Quick Capture. And I thought, you know what? If we implemented it there, then that will help this crew be able to do their job easier. And not only easier, but faster. And so I went back and implemented this. And what I found out is it was really, really easy to implement. I'm like, oh, this is great. And not only that, it made things a lot better. So at our GIS shop that we have, our motto is always, my job is to make your job easier, faster, better, more efficient. If you have that kind of mindset, then you think of, okay, what can I do to make it easier, faster, better? Because we know GIS as a tool can do that, right? And so it's thinking of those projects that will basically do that for your employees, that will make things better. So here's where Quick Capture comes into play. We talked about applying what you've learned in conference into the workplace, so we won't beat that to death. As you're at the UGIC conference, view what you're learning as solutions to the problems that you have in the workplace. As you do that and implement them, then you can take that and make things better. All right. Let's see. I've already talked about all that. So when I was going through, it was Ismail, I think, or Ishmael, however he pronounces it, from Esri that was doing it. And what I found out, or what I thought about it as I was going through the presentation, is I knew that that would speed up data collection immensely. It would be fairly easy to implement because of the way that he taught it. And it would give us more capabilities, and we would get buy-in from the field crews and management just because of the type of app that it was. So how do we do it? How many here know how to publish a service? So almost everyone. If you know how to publish a service, then Quick Capture is pretty easy. You get your map, you publish the service, and then once that service is published, then all you have to do is take the Quick Capture and put it in there, manipulate it a little bit, and then you're ready to go. Of course, test it. But one of the things that I found is very, very helpful with anything that we implement is the training and the follow-up. So I build an app, I get it the way it needs to be, and then what we'll do is I'll take our whole GIS division down. For instance, the streets crew, there's 4 of us. We all went down, sat with the streets crew, and said, all right, this is what we need you to do. We first need you to download the app. And then as they were downloading it, all 4 of us helped them as they were doing it. Then we helped them log in. If they had problems logging in, we helped them log in. Or if their login didn't work, we made sure that, everything worked the way it was supposed to. Help them download so once you get the Quick Capture, you have the individual apps that you create within Quick Capture that they can then load to their Quick Capture. So we help them load those Quick Capture apps. And then we ran through how to do it. And we even went out with the crews. So 4 of us took a truck of crew members and we all went out and we had them test it, run it, learn how to do it. And then as we were with them, they were able to ask questions. And then after they do that, if they have any questions, we tell them, hey, whatever questions you have, let us know and we'll go out and help you. And even if we have to go through and do another run through. But I found that as you do that, you have less anxiety to want to implement new ideas. And so when we brought up this Quick Capture, because we had done that model before, they were pretty on board and they were willing to do it. And these are crews that spend most of their time paving, so technology to them is a little bit scary. And so running it through them, with them, made it so that they were like, okay, I can handle this. So this right here is one of the big things that I think is one of the most key important cogs of the entire wheel that you're working with is the training and the follow-up. And then another part of that is once they do that, if they have any changes that they want to make, go ahead and make those changes because then they see that they're getting the thing that they want. The other motto that we have is if you build it, they will come. I know it's from Field of Dreams, but it's a great motto. And we found that it is so true because we found that as we build things, then they start seeing the capabilities and they come to us and say, well, we want it to do this or we want it to do that. And it just starts expanding from there. And then the GIS becomes something of, instead of, oh, that's a nice tool, when something happens and it shuts down, we call it our GIS appreciation days. I can't do my job, I need the GIS. So anyway, those are the things that you can do to help make your organization grow. So the result that we got out of this, the field crews were able to track their data. It was faster, better, easier, and more data can be tracked. So when we first started doing our snow removal app, it was in ArcGIS Collector, and which is great. But the problem with ArcGIS Collector is you can only do one feature at a time. With Quick Capture, I can do 3, 4, 5, whatever I want. It's really awesome that way. And so instead of just snow removal, we started doing salting and obstructions that were in the way so that they could then take the managers and say, hey, look, these are all the places that people are parking their cars on the street. Can you send out a notice to get them off the street so that we can plow quicker and faster? And so we started improving what we're able to do as a city. And then the other thing is the managers can track it. They can see the problems like we talked about with the cars on the street. And then also being able to put that into online maps and dashboards. So on our online map, we have where all of the snow removal is being done so that as residents call in and say, you haven't plowed my road in 5 years, why haven't you guys come out? Well, sir, ma'am, they were just out there this morning. We can see where they've been. It's just a heavy snowfall, so it's just taking a lot of passes to be able to get that done. So we were able to kind of calm down the residents as well a little bit by having this information. So that was the presentation portion of this. Now we're going to get into a little bit of how to do that. Is there any questions up to this point on what I've talked about so far? Easy group. Great.
Do you go to your managers with the problem, or do they have like, how are you aware of what they need you to do? You know, like with quick capture, did you?
Sometimes I sit in these meetings and I think, that'd be really good for that. Let's try that. And I'll just build it. And then I'll go to the division manager and I will say, oh, sorry, I guess I should repeat the question. I forgot that we're online. The question was, do you go to the managers with the problem to find out what the problems are, or how do you determine what the problems are? Does that sum up? So, like I said, in this case, I knew what the capabilities were. And oftentimes your division managers or your managers or department heads or whatever they may be don't know the capabilities of the software. You know the capabilities of the software. They know the problems. And sometimes you know them, sometimes you don't. And so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll say, okay, this quick capture, I know it'll do this. So I'm going to build something, and then I'm going to take it to the division manager. And that's what I did. I took it to the streets division manager. And I said, you know how we've been doing this over here? If we do it this way, then we can do this, 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 and this. And this is how it will work. And I can show you right here. All I have to do is tap a button, and then it will start tracking. The other great thing with quick capture, it works better on a phone, but you can also do it on an iPad. It has voice activation. So whatever you put on the button as the title of that button, that's all they have to say, and it will basically capture that feature. So if I wanted to, they could say plow, and it starts tracking their plowing. And then when they want to stop that line, they say plow again, and it stops that line. So then they get everything they need really quickly. Although a lot of them, after they started seeing it, just decided it's just as easy just to hit the button. And so they just tap, and then they do what they need to do, and then tap again, and it ends the line. So a lot of it's taking it to the division managers and showing them. Another example I can give you, not with quick capture, is our airport. I wanted us to have GIS for our airport that we didn't have. We had some layers, but it wasn't online, and there wasn't very much. And so I wanted them to be able to start using our GIS as well, because I knew it could do a lot. I didn't know how much, because it was one of those things, if you build it, they will come. So I started building a basically web map of all of the layers that they had. Then I said, all right, what else do I think that they could use? They have this, this, and this. Let's add maybe this, this, and this. Tried to think of all of the things that they might be able to use. And I built two apps, a viewer and an editor, because I knew that they might want to be able to edit some things, but they might want to only show some of the features that they had in their airport. And then I went to the manager and I said, hey, I built this for you. And I had kind of talked to him before. I'd asked him, I said, how would you feel about making this? And he kind of ho-hummed. Part of it was because he had a proprietary database that only they were using, and he wasn't sure that we could get that into our mapping and be able to use it. And so he kind of ho-hummed it. So I built this, and I put that out there, and I let him edit it. And he came back a little bit later, it was maybe 2 or 3 months later, and he said, can we take this database and put it into the mapping so that I can track the owner information on hangars and owner information on aircraft? And I wasn't sure because he had different components, but after talking to him, we figured that we could put everything into one table. I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. So we built that component of it. Well, he comes back about 2 or 3 months later. This is awesome. I love this. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. Can we do this, 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 and this? and we started building it. And then they wanted to be able to have the ability to query tail numbers on aircraft, so they could see where, if it was in a hangar or if it was out, because they keep track of planes that may have come in but are not there anymore, and they have kind of like a boneyard for those. And so they were tracking all of those, and they would be able to type it in and see where that was. Or if an aircraft is coming in, they could type it in and see, okay, that one hasn't been here, let's add it to the list, and they could inventory everything. And he was saying, because you have under Public Works, which is where I am, and engineering over here, you have airport over here. He started touting the GIS a lot to our Public Works director. And so it's one of those things that they don't know the capabilities, but if you can start to get their appetite a little bit wet, sometimes you can help expand that. And then they start coming up with the ideas of, can you add this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And then all of a sudden it becomes this big thing that everybody's using. And when it goes down, everybody's like, oh, I need this. And so those are the types of wins that you can find that can help expand your organization and get the tools that you need. Sorry, that was a long-winded question, or answer to a short question. Does that answer what you're thinking? Were there any other questions on that? Okay, so quick capture. I've built my service, and because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going over the service, I'll just kind of show you what this is. In this service, it has, what we did is we ended up making it so that you have the snow removal layer, but in that snow removal layer, we added it like 6 times. And only one of them is the one that is the editable one. And that's like 12 hours. And then we took those layers and we added it several times so that we could show all the ones that were within the last 3 hours is this color, within the last 6 hours is this color, 12 hours. So you had all these different increments so they could kind of see how long it had been past that they had actually gone and plowed that road. Same thing with the salting. And then you had one of the things after we built the app, they asked, hey, can we add in all of the roads that basically dead end? So that as we're plowing, we don't just kind of off of it. It might be those new roads that they are just building the subdivisions and they haven't finished the rest of the subdivision. So they wanted to know where those were so they wouldn't just kind of fall off with their plow as they were plowing. So we added that. And so those are some of the things that we added. So with quick capture, I go over here into this upper little corner where all the dots are, and there's this quick capture right here. And I click on that and it brings me back to, I guess I should just do it here. So you usually have to sign in, and you can create your first project by doing that, or you can click on your projects. We create them all under our GIS admin account so that it's all kind of kept together. So this isn't under my account, it's under the GIS admin account. And you can kind of see some of the things that we're doing, and we can talk about those a little bit later. But if I want to create a new project, I want to start from an existing layer. So I've just created this feature service that I want to use, and I want to start from there. And what time does this get done? Do you know? 11:10? Okay. I just want to make sure we cruise through this as quickly as possible. And so I'm going to go in, again, it's one of those that's shared with me, and I'm just going to add this layer. And it says, do you want to create buttons from the layer symbology? So I set up everything in my project, so everything's ready to go. If I click on this next, it's going to add every single layer that I want. And it's going to add it, and I can put it in a particular folder if I have folders. And I can even have, you saw that in there that it had an email. If there are times where they're not connected to the internet and they want to be able to keep tracking their data, they can. what it does is it stores it on their iPad until they're in an area that they can connect back to the internet, and they can just send it. And what it does is it sends it to whatever that email is. So you want to make sure that that email is set up. But you'll notice that there are all of the different layers that I've added. And so it's just a matter of going through and picking the ones you want. So let's say on the snow removal, I only need the 12-hour one. I don't want all the other ones, but I want them in my symbology so they can see it. I just want to capture on one of those features. So all you have to do is go through and delete. Let's see, I got to remember. And again, you just delete the button. And then I can also delete that. If I want to put some of them together, then I just put them together like that and just move them however I want. It's better to start with the layers that you want and then remove the buttons that you don't want. And then you can just click on it and say, I want this to say plow. So that if you set up the voice activation, then they can go in and do the plow. Or just say plow. So make it easy. And if I wanted to, I could even say plow 12 hours. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with this. If you delete this, it deletes the button too. So, and you can see right here, the not plowable, it has, that one was a group layer, I believe. And you have the different types of things that you have in there. But then once you do that, and I'm just going to go back to one that we already have over here for sake of time. Go back here. So we're going to go to the snow removal editor. I can show you one that I've cleaned up. So in this one I just have the obstructions, so the dead end, and if there's a car in the way, you can attach pictures. So over here, if I go, I gotta remember where it is. Right here. So you could add a new image. Or remove it if you wanted to. And just have the, so I could add any kind of image if I wanted in there. Of course it doesn't work when you want to do it, right? Maybe they have to be JPEGs. I don't know if I have a JPEG in here, but you get the idea. So that's what we did. We made the images and we put them in there so that it would be easier for them to see what it was that they were actually doing. And this one you can see we also have so these are point features up here. These are line features down here. I have a blocked, so they could get through, but it was pretty tricky for them to get through. They could drive it and have it track where they're going as they drive it, and then the people back in the office can see that black line and know that that's the area we need to notify and let them know. I can do plowing and salting, and then it's based on that. So if I look at the data and look at the information on it, it is going to be the 12-hour one, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, that's the advantage of the buttons, is if you set it up the way you want to and just delete everything else that you don't want, then you get it right where you need it to be, and then as they hit that, it's tracking in that particular field. The other thing that's great about this is you'll notice that I can actually have it set up so if I wanted this to be a button user input, then I can pick what field I want to track in this. This one doesn't have it. But if I go back to here, I can show you one that I made. I want to say Actually, it was the concrete one, I believe, that we set up. Right here. So in this one, we said if they click on this button in the inspection result, it's going to put the word replace in there. So you can specify user input or a coded value. You can also, this one's doing the username. On the snow removal, we have them all log in so that when they go and plow, it actually puts their username into the field. So we know who plowed that road. Also the date it was done. So it tracks the date and time that they plowed that road, so we can track at what time they plowed it, and that's the reason why we can also do the color coding of the snow removal. And then you can also have them fill out up to one value per button. So I can't remember one of these. I don't remember where it was, but you can actually have them fill it out. So if you have questions about that, contact me and we can look it up and show you how to do that. But that's another thing you can do. So there's the buttons. If I go over here, settings, there are some general settings you can do. The accuracy, the threshold, how big you want it to be. It's showing you all the layers that are in there. It's easier to do it coming from the service that you publish. The map, so if I want to pick what base map is behind all of the layers when I'm plowing or whatever else you're doing, then you can specify what map you're using. And you'll notice in there's a show buttons side by side and map side by side. When you're on an iPad, you can see that the buttons are here and then the map's over here. And I can hide that, I'm pretty sure. The other great thing about Quick Capture is if you change something, then it will tell them that there's an update available and they can just update it and it will automatically set it so that they can do that. So I can change how big my map is there. On a phone, it's a little bit smaller, and so you usually are either going to have the buttons or the map. So it depends upon what you want to do there. Any project details like the name of the map, you can see right here. If there's data that they were able to capture but weren't able to send in, it gives you the email of where that's going to be sending that, a description of it. So these are just general things. So when I went to UJIC last year, I found out about this, came back, knew I wanted to do this, built the first app in about probably 2 hours, and started implementing it or getting it ready, and within a couple of days had this up and running, and it was just a big win. And that's why I say easy as pie, because just fiddling around with the settings a little bit, you can kind of figure out, if you don't mind tinkering, what you would add to that to be able to make it work. And I know I'm not doing it justice like Ishmael did, but there's a lot of things you can do with this and really get it out there. I'm going to switch over to the app itself. And we're going to show you right here. So this is the app, and you can see up in the upper right hand corner there's a little kind of wavy map. I'm going to click up there. And I think on this one they wanted to be able to see the map. And so that's why you have, they didn't want to see it side by side. But it's GPS enabled. And so all I would have to do is hit plow. And now it's right now we're inside, so it might not be able to get the location. And as we were doing the demo with them, we were showing them how you could tap the buttons and start and stop. If you click it and click it again right there where you are, it's going to tell you it can't capture the data because you haven't gone anywhere. But as you start moving, 2-3 feet, I can't remember what the distance is, then it will be able to capture what you're doing. And
So for something like blocked, they would have to like click block and drive a little bit, and then click block.
yeah, just tap it. So I could hit blocked. I don't have any location right here, but I could click blocked, plow, salt. I could do all three of them all at once. That's what's great about quick capture, is I could be plowing and salting at the same time, and I could put an obstruction on the side of it and do all four of them if I really wanted to. That's the power of quick capture versus something like field maps. Field maps, you're only collecting one feature at a time. So this is really powerful for some things. The one thing to note about quick capture is it's only going to do new features. It's not going to do existing features. If you want to do existing features, you're going to want to use field maps or you're going to want to use Survey 123. But if you're doing new features, this is a fantastic tool. How are we doing on time? We have about 10 minutes. Well, why don't we open it up for questions?
My question is about licensing. So everybody who is filling these out, do they need to have a field worker license or more, or
Yes.
you're using enterprise? So
Yes.
is it field workers, or can they be viewers? Like Survey 123?
I've never done viewers. So the question was, for those online, to be able to do quick capture, do you have, what licensing wise, do they have to have a field worker license or can they use viewer licenses? I'm pretty sure you have to have a field worker license at least, or if they have a regular enterprise license, I can't remember what it's called, but editor license.
Editor or creator, or
Yeah.
whatever they're calling it.
Any other questions? I know we didn't go out and test it. That would have been really fun. And we would have done it had we been in a longer session, but any other questions that you guys have about this? How many of you see potential for your organizations with this? Yeah. A lot of it is just catching the vision of what can be done with this and then taking it back and implementing something. Oftentimes I'll go and create it first and then go and show them, hey, look, if you go out and you can do this. So with our concrete, I was telling someone earlier, with our concrete inspections, before they were going out and placing either a point or a line and saying 10 foot or whatever, I actually created this quick capture app for the snow removal, and then I said to the streets, you can even use this for concrete if you want. And he's like, you know what? I could get a four-wheeler and I could drive the sidewalks, and then I could do this really fast, because before it was taking them days to do certain blocks. Well, once they started doing this, they were doing a block within 10 minutes. Just driving, just boom, 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 as they were going along and getting all of the inspections. And for IRMA, who is our insurance, they say you have to have so much of the city done in a year. This was huge for them, because they can say, look at all the inspections we've done. We know in the city everything that we have to do. We know that we have, let's say, 1,000 feet, or it's probably more than that, but for example, 1,000 feet of mudjacking, 2,000 feet of replacement, 100 feet of grinding. So they can have all that data available to them and be able to present it to IRMA. So that they can say, yeah, we've inspected this. This is the money. Based on that, they can see how much money they have available to be able to take care of that. So there's so many things that this can apply to make life easier for not just the field workers, but the people doing it. And you can well imagine a field worker saying, yeah, I can drive a four-wheeler and do this and not have to sit there and walk it out, oh yeah, I'll do this. Or even a bicycle for that matter, if they wanted to do it. Have some sort of setup that they could have it on their bicycle and just tap something. Here and then here.
What's the difference between this and collector?
The question was, what is the difference between this and collector? As I said, with ArcGIS Quick Capture, you set up the buttons beforehand, so you create them and then you give them to your field workers. Whereas collector, it's more, you take the features and you click on the feature and then you fill out the information. So Quick Capture has everything kind of set up beforehand, and then all you have to do is hit the button. And then the other big difference between collector and field maps, or collector and field maps and ArcGIS Quick Capture, is that with field maps you can add features or work with existing features, where ArcGIS Quick Capture is mostly new features. Does that answer your question?
Can this work in offline environments too?
Yes. In fact, that's what I was saying. As you're going and collecting it, if you don't have a good Wi-Fi or internet signal, it will still collect the features and it will put them on your device and keep them on your device until you get to a place where you have that internet, and then you just hit submit, and then it sends that as an email to whoever it says, you know, that you set it up on, and then they can take that and put it into the mapping. So that it would put a lot more onus on the manager of the data to make sure that that data gets back in, but it still can be done. I'm test it out before you take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure that it works. Oh, I thought you had a question. Okay.
There's another one.
Sure.
Can you add, does it accept user input? Meaning, like, I was thinking for like a creel survey for fish, if we were to stop an angler, could you, like, say they caught 24 particular
Yes.
fish species at this area, or just hit a button to say they caught a fish species at this area?
Okay. And did I repeat the other questions? If I forget to repeat a question, just call me out on it. So the question for those online was, can you add user input to ArcGIS Quick Capture? For instance, if they wanted to type in how many species of fish that they found at a certain location, could I enter that in instead of having it automatically put in? ArcGIS Quick Capture will allow you to have up to one user input. So if you have one field that you want to put that in there, and I'm pretty sure that's the rule, but I think it's one user input. So you could have everything else automated, but then have the number of fish that you're putting in to put 24. So if you, the button, and I'm going to take a step back, that's per button. So if I have, in your case, 4 different types of fish, and I was having a button for each type of fish, you'd have to set that up in your layer before you published it. And I don't know fish species, so I'm just going to go with something simple. Let's say I had salmon, trout, and bass as 3 user buttons that I put as 3 different, it's all the same feature class, but I've set it up as 3 different layers. I could set them up as 3 different buttons, and then in this one I could have one user input, and that one I could have a different user input. But if you wanted them all to be the same of number of fish, then you could click on the button and then put 24, and that would add 24/7. Or I could click on this button and it would add 13 trout or whatever.
Thank you.
Question over here.
Yeah, so you said that you could add
Okay.
photos. Is it just one photo, or can they do multiple photos? Like if they were going to take a picture of a car that was obstructing their way.
So the question was, can I add photos, and is it just one photo or is it multiple photos? I believe it's one photo. We haven't done that portion of it, because most of the stuff that we've been doing is mostly really quick capture. But when Ishmael did it, we went out and we actually were taking pictures. Here's a tree, click. Here's a bush, click. And so I don't know that. Question over here.
I was playing around with this yesterday after I learned about it, and when I was trying to set one up, it looked like I could specify how many photos were allowed. So I think you can do
So
I don't know how many
the comment from the crowd was, I was testing this out the other day, and it looked like I could specify how many photos were allowed. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Are we at time?
For a phone or iPad? I mean,
The cruise?
Yeah.
It's easier to do. So, sorry, I forgot to repeat the question. Do crews prefer an iPad or a phone? And our crews prefer the iPad. One, because you have more real estate, and if you're driving a big truck, it's easier to have that, to be able to click on the buttons. And the one thing that they really like about the iPad is the ability to see the map, to know where they're going and what they're doing. And the other thing about that too is to be able to see where they plowed. Oh, I've already plowed that road, I'm going to go do a different road. But if you're doing the voice activation, I found it's easier to do on a phone. So you could do a combination of both if you really wanted to. It just kind of depends upon what you want to do. How are we doing on time? It's about time. I'm going to allow one more question, then if you have any other questions, feel free to come up and talk to me afterwards.
In this kind of case, how can you tell if you're recording or not? I mean, can you change the color buttons, the buttons for the colors, whether they're active or not? Or
So, I don't know if I have this up. I don't know how this will work. And I don't know if I have my volume up, but if you, on the iPad or the phone, or, sorry, I'm going to repeat the question. I keep forgetting. The question was, how do I know if I'm plowing or I've captured the feature? There's two ways. One, you're going to actually see, because if I hit start plowing and I have the map and the stuff side by side, then you're going to see over the side the tracking, kind of like if you've ever done, how many have done the collector, tracked it on collector, and you can kind of see the route as you're doing it until you actually submit it, and then it becomes the actual line, kind of like the sketch on ArcGIS Pro. You can see the sketch and then you finalize it and it becomes a feature. It's the same concept. You have a sketch that's actually doing it as you go along, and then after you finish it, it actually becomes the feature. Unless it's a point, and then it just drops the point. The other thing that helps as well is whenever I hit the button, it says whatever word's on there. Start plowing, end plowing, or end plow, or start plow. So that helps as well. So there's a couple of things. So that's all I have right now. If you have any further questions, feel free to come and find me, and I'll try and help out the best I can. Thank you for coming.